And we have a quorum, so I will call the special meeting of the Madison Plan Commission for September 7th, 2023 to order. First, we will get some information from our technical facilitator.
All right. Welcome to our virtual plan commission meeting. I think I'm still, no, I'm not muted. All right. Welcome to our virtual plan commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do the best to call on committee members in the order in which your hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After register and speak, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. All right, we will move on to agenda item 1, public comment. Please note this is for items not on the agenda tonight. So if you are here and looking to speak on agenda item 2, the interim comp plan update, please just indicate that when your name is announced and we'll move you to that item. Heather, can you read folks into the register?
Certainly. Thank you. The first registrant is Ronald Trachtenberg of Century Avenue, opposed. And again, if Ronald is wishing to speak on item 2, if you could just mention that, we'll wait.
I wish to be heard on item 2.
Okay, thank you. Next registrant, Jason Ilstrup of West Washington Avenue, in support, wishing to speak. Jason?
Hello, good Heather. I'm wishing to speak on item 2, please. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Next is Randall Eggert, neither supporting nor opposing, of Shave Road.
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Hi, Randall. Would you like to speak on item 2?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, Robert Kleba of East Gorham Street.
Hold on here. Can you hear me? I just I had
Yes,
to update Zoom here, so I'm like 3 minutes late. And you guys are way ahead of me.
we
Okay,
can hear
so
you. Yep.
okay, let me turn my volume because I cannot hear you. There we are. Okay, thanks, Heather.
Can
Thank
you
you,
hear
Chair.
us now?
I'm sorry.
What we mentioned, Nicole Solheim mentioned that we're taking registrants for item 1. This is public comment not associated with the agenda. If you want to speak on item 2, can you let us know that, and we will call you again at that time.
Oh, thanks, Director Stouter. I would like to register for item 2.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Commissioner Solheim.
Great, thank you, Heather. So next we will go to disclosures and recusals. Members of the Plan Commission should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Do we have any disclosures or recusals? Seeing none. All right, we will move on to agenda item 2, which is the bulk of our meeting this evening. Legistar item 79621, the 2023 Comprehensive Plan Update. We're going to start with a presentation from staff, followed by public comment. After public comment and questions for registrants, we will continue to questions for staff and discussion by the Plan Commission. We'll review the proposed amendments by staff at that time, as well as any other amendments that members of the Plan Commission would like to discuss. And just as a reminder, there will be no formal action by the Plan Commission this evening on this item, but staff is looking for guidance so they can prepare for future meetings. So with that, I will turn it over to staff and Kirsty. Okay, now I'm not used to calling or like selecting people. Are you able to unmute yourself? Okay.
Yeah,
good.
I think it's good. Can you all
Great.
hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen. One moment. And get some things adjusted here. Are y'all seeing the full screen view?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm Kirsty Lodge. I use they, them pronouns. I work in the city's planning division. So here to provide an intro presentation, a little bit of background as we get started discussing the comprehensive plan interim update. The city's comprehensive plan, or as I'll probably mention or refer to it, comp plan, was adopted by the council in 2018 after more than 18 months of public participation. Some of you may have heard me give parts of this presentation before, but I'm hoping to provide a little bit of background for members of the public that have joined us as well. The plan, the comprehensive plan, was shaped by an extensive community engagement effort called Imagine Madison that took place back in 2017 and 18, and that included over 15,000 interactions with community members through a wide variety of ways. And the city's comprehensive plan is a broad-based plan that creates a vision for future Madison and includes recommendations intended to achieve that vision. And it also guides city decision-making and investment. One of the main components of the comprehensive plan is the Generalized Future Land Use Map, or GFLU map, which we'll probably spend quite a bit of time talking about tonight. So here's just a quick look at it, and we'll definitely jump into the details as we move through this. But the Generalized Future Land Use Map, or GFLU map, helps to guide private sector development because it makes recommendations for different land uses across the city. So state comprehensive planning law requires that we have a GFLU map to guide growth and development. And so, for example, when we do a rezoning or consider a rezoning, we look to the GFLU map to make sure that the land use for that property is consistent regarding that rezoning. So the future land use on the GFLU map would be consistent with the rezoning. And we're required by state statute to follow the GFLU map, and doing so helps to provide more transparency and clear expectations for all stakeholders. So the scope of this interim update to the 2018 comprehensive plan is a little bit different than the project that we worked on and adopted in 2018. The city works on two different types of updates to the comprehensive plan. So we did a full decennial update in 2018, which was a deep dive with extensive public participation. But the scope of this project is an interim update. So it's the 5-year post-plan adoption mark, where we've reached 5 years since the plan was adopted. So the scope of this project is a bit more short-term, more narrowly focused, and covers just a more narrow scope than the full decennial update. So we don't anticipate making any edits to any of the goals or strategies and actions that were adopted in the original 6 elements of the plan. So now I'm going to kind of walk us through the staff memo that was provided tonight to the Plan Commission. So items 1 through 3 on the slide here correspond with the items 1 through 3 in the memo. And I'm going to go into more detail for each of these, but to summarize, item 1 includes staff proposed amendments to the GFLU map. Most of those are to reflect land use recommendations in recently adopted city plans. Number 2 includes amendments to the 2023 draft GFLU map that are proposed by the public. And then number 3 are staff proposed changes to the comprehensive plan that are technically just outside of the GFLU map. Not a very I guess more concise way to say that, but they're also proposed by staff, but they are not specific to being on the GFLU map. So there's some other minor edits to the plan. So going into a little bit of detail for item 1 from the memo. Since the comp plan was adopted in 2018, the city has approved 17 new plans or plan amendments. And we're not going to like list all of those and go through any of those in detail, but those sub-area plans include neighborhood plans, neighborhood development plans, and special area plans. And making these changes to the comprehensive plans GFLU map helps to more clearly convey city land use policy and ideally make it easier for the public and all stakeholders to understand our land use policy. So here's the list of those 17 plans or plan amendments. And again, we're making these so that we can align our GFLU map with the land use recommendations in those recently adopted plans. For number 2 on within the memo, I would say again, most of the revisions to the GFLU map from item 1 are I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We are still talking about item 1. So sorry for the confusion. In addition to those changes that are made based on those recently adopted plans, there's a couple others somewhat minor changes to the GFLU map. Those include annexations by McFarland, an intergovernmental agreement with the town of Cottage Grove. Staff completed an administrative review to make sure that parks and other open spaces over an acre are mapped consistently. And then there's a few changes to reflect recent approvals, such as the Ramish Farm on the north side, as well as a couple places where the city has purchased land for parks. And then finally, regarding the GFLU map, staff is also proposing some changes to the map notes that are associated with the GFLU map. And those are on page 19 within the adopted 2018 comprehensive plan. Now we'll move on to item 2 from the memo. These are the proposed amendments to the GFLU map that are proposed by the public. And so this process included an opportunity for the public to propose amendments. We received 81 amendments proposed by the public in total. I'll be pulling up the interactive map of those proposed amendments in just a moment here. But overall, staff recommends that 7 of the proposals be incorporated into the GFLU map. Those are shown in green on the spreadsheet that is also provided with the materials for tonight. And then there are also 5 items on the spreadsheet shown in yellow. And staff recommends a change to the GFLU map that is just slightly different from what the applicant's original proposal was. And so we'd like to discuss those as well with Plan Commission. So as Nicole mentioned, the staff suggests that we discuss each of the yellow and the green items from the spreadsheet. And then we'll take public comment, and Plan Commission can identify any other amendments that should be included for further discussion. Let's see, just I guess for reference, Plan Commission previously discussed using these criteria to review the amendments proposed by the public. And these are also listed in the materials in Legistar. And then I'm just going to briefly bring up the interactive map here. I hope it comes up in the right window. It did. Excellent. So I just want to point out just a few things to make it a little easier as we talk about the amendments. I just wanted to note that the map notes can be turned on by going into the layers over here. You can turn the map notes off and on. The outlines that represent the staff proposed changes can also be turned off and on. Those are shown in black. And the proposals, the amendment proposals by the public are shown in blue. And then finally, the numbers that are within the blue outlines correspond to the spreadsheet. Okay, are y'all seeing the slide again? Okay, great. So as we, a couple other things here just to mention before we move on. As we reviewed the GFLU amendments from the public, a few themes arose that we also noted in the memo. So I guess first, while it's not listed here, I wanted to mention that quite a few, maybe even a majority of the amendments, GFLU amendments that were submitted, were not submitted by the property owner themselves, which is just something to keep in mind as we discuss some of them. And then some of the GFLU amendments propose significant changes from the current recommended land use. And you'll note in the spreadsheet that there are quite a few of those where it lists that staff feels that the applicable area plan would be the best process or best venue to consider some of those changes to the GFLU map instead of through this process. And as part of the city's new planning framework, there are 12 area plans that will be created and then updated every 10 years. So moving forward, it's intended that the area plans will be adopted and then we will reflect the GFLU map into the comprehensive plans GFLU map. A major benefit of moving to these 12 area plans is we can regularly look at land use across the city and engage a wide range of stakeholders and provide more context for considering some of these potential changes to the GFLU map. That's part of the reason my staff feels that those are the best venue to consider some of those changes. And then I just wanted to note that while we're recommending that Plan Commission incorporate only 12 of the 81 proposals from the public, all of these suggested changes have been noted for consideration during the applicable area plan process. So there'll be an opportunity to consider these changes during those processes moving forward, as well as during the decennial update to the GFLU map, the comprehensive plan, which is expected to occur in 2027 or 2028, somewhere in that time frame. Another thing to mention is, oops, sorry about that. You'll see that Downtown Madison Inc. submitted quite a few amendments. I think it was 26 of them for the area that's around Regent Street and Camp Randall to Park Street generally. And many of those request a specific maximum building height or a specific number of stories for certain blocks in that area. But since the GFLU map covers the entire city, it's not really structured to provide specific height recommendations for just certain parts of the city. So specificity regarding specific building heights would be better to be included during some of those upcoming area plans, and in the case of the Regent Street area during the Near West area plan. And then additionally, several applications proposed changing areas that were designated as low residential to low medium residential to allow a wider range of building forms like duplexes or 3-unit buildings. So there were a few applications that relate to that sort of topic or theme, including like areas of Greenbush, Vilas, Regent, Tenny Lapham, and a few others. And staff doesn't support those amendments, but wanted to note that within LR areas, I guess it's a common misconception that you can only build single-family homes there, but really you can build a couple other building form types as well. So we just wanted to kind of point that out as part of the reason why we're also not supporting those proposed amendments. Okay, and then moving on to the third item from the staff memo. So this third topic includes discussion of the other staff proposed changes to the plan document that are not part of the GFLU map itself. So this slide is supposed to be my best visual representation of kind of how these changes will fit into the plan itself. So we'll add a cover memo that will provide some background information about progress. That's the implementation since 2018. Update the population projections within the growth framework chapter. As we've been discussing, we'll be updating the GFLU map. But in addition, we've revised and made some new proposed language for the peripheral planning areas map, and that correlating section of text, mostly due just to existing conditions or recently adopted plans and intergovernmental agreements. And then within the original 6 elements of the plan, the only anticipated changes are updating maps, and that's mainly just for existing conditions. And then finally, we'll add the 7th element, which is health and safety, and that was adopted by Common Council in 2022 after a year-long process to develop those recommendations. All right, this is my last slide, so I just wanted to cover the anticipated timeline moving forward. The Plan Commission will not make any formal action tonight regarding the proposed amendments to the comp plan. This meeting is to allow for early public comment, and Plan Commission can also provide staff with direction. So the guidance that Plan Commission provides tonight will be used to create a revised draft of the 2023 GFOU map, as well as a next iteration of the amendments to the comp plan in whole. And that next version or iteration is what will be reviewed at an upcoming public hearing this fall. So these are anticipated dates. The timeline could change, but we anticipate holding a public hearing in October. So that's when Plan Commission will take formal action on the proposed comp plan amendments, and members of the public will have a chance to speak again at that time. And then we would anticipate going through the adoption process, the review and adoption process in the fall. So that's the overview. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and hand it back over to the chair.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. All right, so we're gonna now head to public comments. So again, I will ask Heather if she can read registrants into the record.
Certainly. First registrant again, Ronald Trachtenberg of Century Avenue opposing. And Ronald, you have 3 minutes.
Could my client, Randall Egert, talk first? First of all, he's the client. Second of all, he has a meeting he has to attend very shortly.
Okay, we will go to Randall Egert of Shave Road, neither supporting nor opposing. Randall, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Randall Eggert. I own the 6-acre property located at the intersection of Shuey Road and White Fox Lane on the city's far west side, which was listed as amendment request number 1, 2, and 3 on the list of requests that the planning staff received. I'm requesting a change to the land use map for this site from the low residential category to the low medium residential, or medium, some combination. Hopefully you've all seen and read the letter and the location map that I submitted to the Plan Commission prior to the meeting today. As you've seen, the planning staff did not recommend approval of our amendment request. In their written response, the staff states that a comprehensive Elderberry neighborhood plan amendment was completed in 2018, which is accurate, followed by, quote, staff's opinion is that the conditions have not changed to warrant this amendment, end quote, which in my opinion is wholly inaccurate. For evidence that conditions have changed dramatically in this area since the last update to the land use map, I'd encourage the members of the Plan Commission to take a look at the city's aerial photos of this area taken in 2018, and then look at the updated photo from 2022, both of which are available on the city website. You'll see that 2 brand new single-family subdivisions have popped up in that period of time, Eagle Trace and Chapel View. Further west, there are more single-family subdivisions in the Elderberry neighborhood that have since been approved and are now under construction. Add all of those new lots together, and there are literally hundreds of new single-family homes that have already been built over the past 5 years, or will certainly be built over the next 5 years before the next comprehensive plan update. And these are not inexpensive homes. Most of these have sold for anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million, with some exceeding that number. In 2018, when the Elderberry neighborhood plan was last updated, there was no Pope Farm Elementary School, which is now less than a half mile north of our property along Shave Road, just north of Old Sauk Road. The referendum that was used to pay for that school passed in November 2018 after the neighborhood plan was last updated. Now the school is there. And I ask you, how many young families with elementary school age children can afford to pay anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million to buy a house where their young children can walk to the school? I don't know too many. And our property has great proximity to nearby parks like Eagle Trace and the Pope Farm Conservancy, as well as the new paved multi-use path that the city installed a couple of years ago that borders the north and east side of our property. So there's great access to parks and recreational amenities here for people of all ages. The site's also located a short drive from many existing or planned shopping and employment areas on the west side, all of which makes this a very convenient location for families to live, work, and play. Our property is also bordered by 2 collector streets that are planned to carry heavier traffic than typical neighborhood streets, potentially with future public transit routes on one or even both of them, which again seems to make this site more practical for higher density than the low residential category would allow. For all of these reasons, I'm asking the Plan Commission for your consideration to reject the status quo based on decisions made over 5 years ago and recognize that the city and the area housing market has changed dramatically since then by changing the land use map category for this site from low residential to the low, medium, or medium residential category.
That's time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next registrant, Ronald Trachtenberg, Century Avenue. Ron, you would have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm the attorney for the Eagerts, and one of the benefits of letting Randy go first is he said about half of my speech. The housing demand for housing in Madison has escalated tremendously since 2018. There have been numerous studies and articles that establish that the city is falling behind in needed housing stock of the affordable and of the middle level market rate housing. In the last few days alone, there was an article showing that the Madison Metropolitan School District teachers can no longer afford to live in the city of Madison. And that also includes fire personnel and even police personnel. They cannot afford to live in the city of Madison. My own modest neighborhood assessments have escalated from the high 200s a couple of years ago to recent sales of $500,000. We need to look at nodes that the density can be increased beyond low density, especially in the area of the far west side. Within a quarter mile of Pioneer Road, which will be the boundary between the city of Madison and the town of Middleton, only low density housing can be built. This area is one of the few areas remaining nearby that a higher level of density can be built. In reviewing the request for higher density, we believe that the Plan Commission should do the following analysis. Would the request negatively impact on the existing development pattern? We believe not. Would the request negatively impact on the proposed development plan? We believe not. It won't affect the existing housing, it won't affect the planned housing, and it doesn't affect the overall plan, just this single node. And the last issue is whether or not the request would benefit the overall city goals. And we believe it would. It would provide more housing options on the far west side for people who cannot afford 750 to $1.5 million houses. This is extremely important if we're to maintain a viable, diverse city. We would therefore request the Eagers request be granted, and we thank you for your consideration. If you have any questions, we'd be glad to respond to them. I'm done.
All right, thank you. The next registrant is Jason Ilstrup of West Washington Avenue in support. And Jason, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Director Stouter. It's good to see you, and thank you very much, Chair Solheim. As you see, Downtown Madison Inc. submitted 26 separate amendments in and around the Regent Street area to amend the comprehensive plan to add more density in an area that we believe can handle more density. DMI wholeheartedly believes that Regent Street is one of the few central corridors left in the city that can add increased density, can add more housing in the area, including housing affordability, and not have displacement. And so we submitted a whole series of amendments to add height. And you can see that in the map. We proposed around 2 floors in most of the area, what was from the original Regent Street plan. And having several meetings with the city staff, and I want to say a huge thank you to Kevin and to Kirsty and to Brian for meeting with us. We clearly understand that this may not be the process to make micro level or micro scale changes to the GFLU map. However, we think that the timing is quite good to actually make some of the amendments and approve some of the amendments that we are putting forward. We are very thankful that the staff did recommend several of our amendments, 3 of them, and then they recommended discussion on several others. And we wholeheartedly would like the Plan Commission to review those in discussion, and we want hopefully some variant of those to move forward, in particular on the 1100 southern block of Regent Street, where we think the whole block is ripe for new development. We would also love consideration of several other amendments that we think are very important to the fabric of the Regent Street area and can take more density right now. And in fact, developers are working actively in these sites. These include numbers 29, which is the block bounded by Regent Street, Randall, and Southwest Path, and Amendment 20, which is a block bounded by Regent Street, Mills, and College and Brooks. We know of projects that are actively happening now, and we need to signal to the development community that more density will help make those projects happen and build the vastly and importantly needed housing that we need today. We also would like to re-engage on the 36 and 37 amendments, which is the employment district at the intersection of Park and Regent on the southern side. This has been part of a long-running plan, 10 to 15-year public-private partnership to build a Park Street medical corridor. And we think adding more density on those 2 blocks will help ignite that plan. And we really see many of those institutional partners doing more with those sites. And in fact, there are plans in place, and adding more density there would create more employment and a central medical campus that is badly needed in the downtown. We also would like to see we urge the city to move forward on the Near West plan more quickly than on number 8, as we see now. We think 4 years, potentially at 2 years per 2 plans per year, is just too long in an area where we're seeing significant demand right now. We would urge the planning staff and the city to move forward with the Near West plan more quickly so that we can get into the nitty-gritty of densities in this area. Lastly, we'd like to thank our friends at the Planning Commission, all of you, for your work on this, and the planning staff. You've been fantastic to work with. In summary, we urge that—
Okay, that's time, Jason.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next registrant is Robert Kleba of East Gorham Street. You'll have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Director Stouter, and I'm sorry for the registering for the wrong agenda item. I am not as fluent in zoning as you are. However, I do appreciate the terminology of definitions, differentiation, and geographic implementations. With this language, you are establishing the rules and patterns in which we want to see our community develop. This language works to define what exists, but more importantly, it works to shape the future. The future in zoning speak is bigger and brighter. Zoning can describe the underdeveloped and underserved districts with language that describes a future with greater potential. But often these underdeveloped and underserved areas are rich in naturally occurring affordable housing. In time, zoning changes and concomitant redevelopment can threaten the residents of these areas with displacement and homelessness. We all know the example of what happened in the 1960s. Our city participated in the Great Society movement and raised our most affordable and culturally diverse neighborhood, the Greenbush. The leaders of our community promoted its destruction for a better Madison. Likewise, we have today other neighborhoods with naturally occurring affordable housing and rich diversity that are under great risk from recent zoning changes. While you are reviewing low residential, general commercial, and special institutional areas, I would like the Plan Commission and staff to consider how zoning affects areas with naturally occurring affordable housing, like those on South Park Street, Northport Drive, and Darbo-Worthington. These are important neighborhoods where lower income residents can live and hopefully will continue to live in our city. The recently passed transit-oriented development overlay district zoning threatens these neighborhoods with gentrification. The definition of gentrification is not in the zoning vocabulary, but I would like to ask you to keep it in mind. Madison needs more diversity in housing, and preserving our naturally occurring affordable housing should be a priority. I ask you to consider the impact of any change to the comprehensive plan on our city's naturally occurring affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next registrant is Josh Olson of Raymond Road, neither supporting nor opposing. Josh, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me? I can see my mic. Okay. Hi, my name is Josh Olson. I submitted several broad GFLU amendments through the eyes of a citizen not focused on specific lots that could be amended, and instead how land is used generally in Madison. My amendments seem to be addressed in the theme section from the Planning Division memo, so I figured I would give a little update on my end. I think Madison should consider designating the majority of the areas that are currently low residential as low medium residential. I think this is a positive change because the city is growing quickly, and selecting low medium residential provides us more flexibility with land use decisions when considering future land use. We have to wait 5 years or so for a specific area plan to make updates, so it's important that we make decisions that apply now and also years from now. Planning Division stated in the memo that it's a misconception that only single-family homes can be built in the low residential areas, and other types of homes are acceptable, like small multifamily buildings that are generally permitted along arterials. I should have made it more clear in my amendments that I didn't think that it was only single-family houses, but the vast majority of the homes there are single-family homes. When I did look at the land use category chart to form my amendments, what I saw with low medium residential land use compared to low residential is less asterisks and more options. Low medium residential includes the designation that the vast majority of low residential is made of, including single family homes, while also providing more options to homeowners that are allowed outright rather than requiring conditions to build. In a city that is growing fast, has a large population of younger workers like me that will likely want to find a home in the next decade, along with other populations that probably have other reasons to want flexibility with their housing options, I see an opportunity. I'm concerned that we're not opening up enough land for the option to upzone. At a West Area Plan meeting, I talked to a resident who was concerned with more high-rises near Midvale. I asked her what her solution would be for that situation, and I noted that out of all the colors in the area, only a tiny section was dedicated to purple or brown, which is the most dense zoning. The vast majority of it was dedicated to yellow. If we continue to limit what can be built on most of the land in Madison, we will only continue to creep of high-rises into neighborhoods or the exodus of home buyers into neighboring cities. By allowing low-medium residential designations, we can meet our housing demand in a more natural way through multifamily homes. To me, it seems like low residential is arbitrarily restrictive, requires additional hoops for homeowners, and could slow down home formation in Madison considerably. In a time when homes are abundant, this might be a useful designation, but we are significantly behind on our housing goals in the city, and I think a broad change to these land uses allows for more options rather than hamstringing us until we can find a fix 5 years down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. The next registrant is Mark Elston of Marathon Drive. Mark, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. I wanted to just express support for the proposed changes to the comprehensive plan with regard to property owned by houses of worship, and at the same time urge you to consider adding more flexibility for development on that kind of property. And the reason for this is Madison's going to experience a massive transition in the use and ownership of property owned by houses of worship in the coming decade. And we have a unique opportunity right now to encourage the most good to come from that property. But if we don't act to create maximum flexibility, we will end up with large amounts of vacant or underutilized property in some of our best infill locations throughout the city. I've lived in Madison almost 20 years. I've been involved in church property related activity here at Press House in town, and also through a national nonprofit that supports houses of worship developing their property. I have a book coming out on this subject in January. And all of this work, one thing has become clear to me: we are facing a massive wave of church property transitions. Estimates suggest as many as 100,000 church properties will be sold in the coming decade. That amounts to 1/3 of all churches. So imagine what that will mean in Madison as 1/3 of church property changes use or goes dormant. We have one opportunity here to make the most of that. For these reasons, I support the updates that allow for more options and adaptive reuse of places of worship, but I also urge the Plan Commission to consider adding greater flexibility and would recommend some kind of language that gives the Plan Commission more flexibility to consider higher density at places of worship where that is appropriate. That doesn't force higher density where it's not necessary or appropriate, but it would make it possible. The current changes serve as an excellent baseline or floor from which to work, but there are instances where a development on a church-owned property could be built to a higher level of density than this plan calls for, without increasing its current intensity of use. So if a property moves from institutional church use to residential, usually that intensity will go down, even if the residential use is medium density or higher. And that's because a church with hundreds of members attending at regular intervals, perhaps in the past, is a high intense use more than a residential property. Limiting a residential project to low or low medium density on a formerly church property could in fact be a big step backwards in terms of intensity of use. And I don't think we want to do that at a time when we are desperately in need of more housing. In my experience helping houses of worship in the Madison area explore their options, I'm also finding that often low or low medium density housing developments are simply not viable at places of worship. That's sometimes because the parcels are too small for the economics of those approaches, or sometimes because the house of worship wants to remain on site and additional community support program space is needed alongside the housing. So houses of worship in this moment of transition, they're not in a position to continue with their status quo.
Mark, that's the 3-minute time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next and final registrant wishing to speak is Matthew Aro of West Washington Avenue. Matthew, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Heather. I'm Matthew Aro with Aro Eberly Architects. I'm representing the owners of Hong Kong Cafe at the 1100 block of South Regent. They have the owners of Hong Kong Cafe have also solicited a number of letters of support from other owners on the block as well as in the area in support of the amendment, which is to convert to a community mixed use from the present day uses on the block. We want to thank planning for supporting the change to part of the block, but we believe strongly that the Plan Commission should consider changing the entire block to community mixed use. Terry and Philip from Hong Kong Cafe have really spent, along with their family, a lot of time and many hours trying to build support from people on this block, ownership, and an area interested parties. And they would really be heartbroken if only part of the block would be converted to the community mixed use. There are some other reasons why the Plan Commission should consider the entire block to be converted as well. CMU is guidelines say 2 to 6 stories in height. No one understands this to be an entitlement that says you're absolutely going to have 6 stories. What we would suggest is that if the entire block were converted to CMU, this would preserve the ability of the future planners and the Plan Commission for flexibility when reviewing future project requests for this block. 90-foot lot depths, which is what the north half of the block has currently from Regent Street to about mid-block, also has some challenges when it comes to a mixed or commercial type use with regard to creating loading zones, other supports that may be needed. I want to point out that this block is not like the 1200 block of South Regent, which you recently approved a housing project on. That project fills much of the lot, and the one major difference is that that block has an alleyway which runs between the north and the south halves of that block, giving a little extra buffer and space between the 2 different uses. This block does not have that, and you would have potentially up to 6 stories of commercial or community mixed use, excuse me, on one side, stepping down to present day uses, which are or were single family homes and or lower scale apartment buildings without any buffer between them. So creating an entire block.
Thank you, Matthew. That is your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, Plan Commission, that does conclude the registered speakers. We do have two other registrants who are listed in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. One is Adam Winkler of Rimrock Road, and the other is Robert Proctor of East Mifflin Street. And I'll turn it back over to Vice Chair Solheim.
Thank you, Heather. Do we have any questions of registrants? Any questions of registrants? Alder Bennett. I will ask if you can unmute yourself because I don't think I can.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, May, okay.
Whoever unmuted who, I don't know. Because Robert Proctor is available, he is willing to speak, correct? Can I ask a question?
Yes, looks like we have Robert available.
I'm here.
Hi, Robert. In the comments, I heard a general theme of a desire to increase low residential to higher uses, and amending our zoning maps as such. I'm wondering if you can speak to how this will impact bringing more realtors or development to Madison. I know that we've made several changes to our zoning map currently, but how would increasing the allowance for density allow for more development?
Well, I believe that obviously, as the Plan Commission members know, that there's a lot that goes into determining the different reasons for loosening up zoning. But I do believe that allowing for more density and more options for density creates more opportunities for many developers at the different levels to come in and create more units. Whether that's through converting houses or building the missing middle, as we like to talk about a lot. I do believe that, in essence, trying to move away from single family zoning will increase more density. And so that, as a general matter, with the Realtors Association hat on, we would support that as seeing it as having the ability to create more units. As the speaker spoke to, I think he spoke very eloquently to it. So we would agree that that would provide more possibilities and create more units. I'm not prepared to get into the details as to the different areas based on staff comments. And just to kind of make a point, I'm here representing also North Shore Rentals LLC, which was application number 56 in support of the staff's recommendation. So
Thank you, Robert. Does that answer your question, Alder Bennett?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of the registrants? Seeing no raised hands, we will finish the public comment period. And before moving on to questions for staff, I would just like to ask commissioners if there are any amendments they would like to discuss beyond the amendments recommended by staff. And those would include the items in 1, 2, and 3 of the memo that Kirsty reviewed, including the green and yellow of the public proposed amendments. If there are any other amendments on that list that you would like to discuss, please raise that now. And then I ask that because if there are none others, staff will take that as guidance that we are not ready to move forward with those amendments at this time. That will be considered consensus to leave those off the list for our further consideration. So I will ask Alder Field.
Yes, thank you. I wonder if we could stand informal for about 2 minutes while I go through the list. I wasn't quite prepared for that question, and I have a couple that I'd like to talk about.
Yes, I'll move on to Commissioner Heck. and then we can give a little minute or two for you to scroll through that long list.
I actually have kind of related input. I wasn't prepared for that question either, but I feel like we need to have kind of a general discussion of some of the items that have come up that aren't in regard to particular proposed changes before I'm even ready to choose. I have questions for staff about process and where we're going. So I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I feel like there's a few questions I'd like answered before I could do that.
That sounds very reasonable. We can go to general questions of staff before we dig into the specifics. I'll just call in Alder Figueroa Cole as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna lean on Patrick to Commissioner Heck to ask process questions. This is the first time that I am part of this process, so I like to understand, I kind of understand how the information is collected, like that's been clear by the presentation that I've seen a few times already, but then how does this move through the process in general? Like so I'm hoping that, I hope that Patrick will have some of those questions to cover that. I need some clarity on the general process and our role as commissioners in it.
Okay, so we will move on to general questions and discussion with staff before determining any additional amendments to consider and discuss. Alder Evers.
Thank you, Chair Solheim. I wonder when it might be appropriate for me as the Alder for District 13 to comment on 3 of the recommendations that staff actually did approve, but I wanted to offer some qualifying remarks. But in a sense, it would be kind of like a public comment, but also part of your discussion. So I wasn't sure where that would fit in on your agenda.
Yes, thank you for asking that. We will dedicate some time to go through all of the green and yellow additional items per se, so would appreciate your input at that time. Okay, so I will open it up to questions from staff and general discussion. Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. First, just one quick comment for staff. We heard some public comment from Mark Eldston, which I knew I had read, but it does not appear in Legistar. And I think that's because we received emails to plan commissioners that didn't end up in Legistar. And I don't know if that is possible to fix, or perhaps I couldn't locate them. Anyway, that's just kind of an aside. I got confused though about which item he was talking about, because speakers who didn't give the item number made it a little confusing for those of us who are overwhelmed. I'll move on to questions. Sorry. Just a few general questions. I want to make sure we understand a few things as we start evaluating these things, and most of us know the answers to things, but it might help the public too. The generalized future land use map, I heard Kirsty say must be followed. Is that always true?
Sorry, Heather, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Heck, for that question. It's a great question. So in the state of Wisconsin, we do have a state statute that requires that each and every zoning and subdivision decision that's made by municipalities, such as the City of Madison and all others, do need to be consistent with our comprehensive plan. Now, the generalized future land use map lays out general land use categories for what are if and when properties develop or redevelop, what are the general parameters that the city's laying out for the land uses across the entire city and even beyond the city's current edge. It's very important when the city, meaning the Common Council, votes to rezone a property, that it's generally consistent with what's on that generalized future land use map. Now, as many of you know, there might be 3, 4, 5 different zoning districts for each future land use category. So there's more zoning districts on our city zoning map than there are future land use categories. So we can find many ways to find that a rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And I'll add one other caveat that sort of illustrates a gray area. The generalized future land use map is not meant to be parcel specific. So for this, for this 20-foot stretch of land, there is some flexibility regarding whether the zoning is exactly consistent with the generalized future land use map. And so sometimes I will say, many times a year, the Plan Commission and the council may make a rezoning decision that involves a sliver of land or a property or two beyond that which is exactly consistent with that generalized future land use or GFLU map. So I wanted to add that caveat as well. But by and large, we as staff provide recommendations to the Plan Commission and ultimately the council that are really important to follow statutorily to make sure that those rezoning decisions are consistent with that comprehensive plan. So I hope I've illustrated, yes, there's some gray area there, but it is a state statute, not just a local decision to remain consistent with the city's comprehensive plan.
Thanks. That was what I was after. That was really helpful because as I look at these, all of these suggested amendments from the public and otherwise, I wanted to remind myself that on occasion there can be wiggle room if, for instance, maybe a neighborhood plan or special area plan is a little different, in language than the GFLU map. That sometimes gives Plan Commission some subjectivity and interpretation skills, and as well as other factors. So when perhaps a particular rather specific amendment is perhaps not eventually recommended for this round of changes, it doesn't mean that necessarily that that something perhaps couldn't happen that is related to that amendment. You get my point. Okay, one more general question. So in the planning processes that Kirsty mentioned and we're all familiar with, and somebody brought it up, I think, in public comment too, about, that if we're doing approximately 2 special area plans a year, maybe we're only going to get to 8 of the 13 area plans before the next update to the full update to the comprehensive plan in 5 years. So I could see where some of those areas will be a little behind, at least, in with regards to some of the goals that people are after in their amendments. Will they then have to wait until 10 years from now for the 5-year update to the new plan that we would do if their special area plans don't happen between now and the next full update of the comprehensive plan?
Heather?
Sure, I'll try this one and then certainly open to Kirsty or Brian with additions. The short answer, we believe, is no. So as many of you know, we've laid out an entirely new planning framework for the way that we approach our sub-area planning here in the city. I think our shared vision is that the next time the comprehensive plan is updated, deeply updated with public engagement for a goal of reaching the 2028 adoption, we realize that a few of the 12 areas will not be completed yet with their own area plan, just as Commissioner Heck mentioned. We believe that comprehensive plan update process that ends in 2028 could offer another chance to update the generalized future land use map, particularly in those areas that haven't yet been covered by one of the new area plans. And so in short, no, I don't think folks would need to wait 10, 12, 14 years for changes if they're not made this evening. I think I want to extend my answer just a little bit to restate that when this particular process, the comprehensive plan interim update began and was authorized by the Plan Commission and Council, the intent was not to do a large public process. We were really looking at folding in the easy to understand, almost the no-brainer land use changes that made sense. First being those that have been adopted in recent sub-area plans since 2018. And many of the ones that we've recommended for you this evening to give some more consideration to, we think are fairly straightforward. Maybe there's a little bit of gray area there. We think they make sense to move forward with. There were several among the 81 unprecedented number of 81 recommendations that we received that we think really warrant more public process than what this process can afford at this point. And so while we may not disagree that some of these recommendations from the public are great to consider in the near future, we're less comfortable, at least as staff, with the city making a decision to move forward with these more dramatic changes, more significant changes, absent a more robust public engagement strategy. So I wanted to kind of add that. I think it's restating a lot of what Kirsty said as well. But if I look at Kirsty and Brian, anything else to add there with regard to Commissioner Heck's question? Okay.
Thank you, Heather. Reiterating some of what Kirsty had said earlier in the second half of your answer was helpful. Thanks.
All right, Alder Field.
Thank you very much. I want to thank staff too, because if I understand correctly, I think you guys were caught off guard with the volume of these that came through. So I know this was a lot of unexpected work. So thank you for working through all of this. I was wondering if, given the fact that we on the Plan Commission had previously discussed with staff changes to the methodology that we're using to calculate or estimate population growth, in fact, an accelerated methodology and estimate of population growth per year during this interim update, whether that increased population projection per year was a factor at all when considering these density changes, or whether the consideration of that factor is more the purview of the Plan Commission when considering amendments like this.
Kirsty.
I can answer that. I mean, I think in a somewhat vague sense, it is considered as we work through and review these recommendations, but also it is up to the Plan Commission to consider the projections as we work through these recommendations.
Thank you. And I have one quick follow-up. So on the Near West Area Plan in particular, staff comments note that this is the sequence of 8 in the framework area planning process. I'm dialing in on cellular, so I didn't have a chance to, I don't have Wi-Fi right here, so I couldn't look at the map that shows which years all of the area plans are expected to be taken up. Do we have a best guess about when the Near West Area Plan might be taken up as a process? I'm noting that many of the more considerable amendments are in that area, and I don't, I'm just curious if we have an idea about when that would happen.
Kirsty, can you answer that?
I can make an estimate, and if it helps, I could also show the map again. One moment, I gotta put this on the correct screen. I think that the best estimate is probably, sorry about that. I think the best estimate, so the Near West Area Plan is listed as number 8. It's hard to anticipate, but if we do 2 of these every year or so, it could take a little bit longer. I think we would be estimating that around 2028. Would also love to hear if my other colleagues you have a better estimate.
I think that's our best estimate at this point.
That'll do. I appreciate it. That was my last question. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Field. Commissioner Mendez.
Thank you, Chair. I see it in some of these, but I just want to confirm that if something's in a transit in a TLD zone, that potentially they can increase the density of residential, correct? Or the number of units or et cetera, which some of these are asking for. Right, Heather?
Generally, yes. So with in all of our single family districts, if you're also within the TOD overlay, you have the right to do a total of 3 units on your property, a 2-unit building and then an accessory dwelling unit as well. So that's one sort of gentle increase in density. In other higher density residential zoning districts or mixed use districts, really the boost of the transit oriented development is the number of units that one could pursue by right or as a permitted use. There's not there's not an increase in density allowable per se, but one could do a 100-unit mixed-use building rather than a 60-unit mixed-use building by right in the commercial corridor transitional district as one example. So it really varies based on what base zoning district the property's in, but in general, yes.
Thank you.
Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you. So Heather, earlier when you answered Commissioner Heck's questions on regards to some of the requests were not recommended because staff felt that it needed deeper community engagement. Is that reasoning included on the list?
It is included on the list of general themes that Kirsty showed in the initial presentation, that we saw a lot of, well-founded, understandable recommendations that covered large swaths of land where there are many different owners and residents and businesses, none of whom may be engaged in this process at all. And so, that I think was discovered as one trend that we saw that just raised the concern that some of these changes, while they might have a lot of merit, probably aren't as appropriate for the city to move forward without more of a public process in those areas. And such a process, in our minds, certainly comes with a sub-area plan.
Yeah, so I'm just really trying to balance the subjectivity on the process, right? So I think that's kind of the path that Patrick was to try to take us back to the to the actual rules and legislation. So in theory, as long as we follow the legal terms or whatever, the legal conditions, those things can also be argued or presented or whatever, right? Like I'm just really trying to get to make decisions the least subjective possible. And as important as public engagement is, I also want to understand, do we have purview over some of these things based on the rules?
Yes, I think that, regardless of the decisions that are made about what the generalized future land use or GFLU map says, the Plan Commission and Council have some latitude with regard to rezoning decisions. Statewide, yes, they need to be found to be consistent, but there might be many different choices that could be made regarding the zoning district in each land use category. If you're talking about the difference of 1 or 2 stories for a building, the Plan Commission, as you know, has a conditional use process, and they look at the height of buildings through the lens of conditional use standards and whether those are met, with an eye toward adopted plans. But yes, the Plan Commission has shown some discretion and certainly has the ability to show discretion on their decisions moving forward.
Thank you.
In addition to that, I just want to remind Plan Commission members of the criteria that we set and adopted in terms of how we would evaluate these amendments. So ensuring that any decisions are consistent with that as well. Commissioner Heck.
Thanks for letting me ask another question of Heather. Heather, I want to understand the difference between the amount of public engagement, let's say, that has been done on this particular 5-year update process to that was done for the TOD overlay district, for instance. In my mind, there was a quite a large public engagement process, and this one for TOD, and so and this one is really much less robust, and that's kind of partially why some of these proposed changes or staff isn't in favor of. Could that be said, you think?
Yes, I think that's correct. I'll look at Ben Zellers. Ben and I were involved in a lot of the transit-oriented development community outreach. You know, we had four virtual community meetings and then several other meetings at the request of alders. Really, got out there into neighborhoods to discuss transit-oriented development. And
okay.
For this particular process, by design, it was designed with much shallower public engagement.
I wonder if Plan Commission were to generally follow staff's recommendations in our discussion tonight, we could also, our input is going to be given to staff, and the actual ordinance change or not ordinance changes, but the changes to the comprehensive plan will then be fully formulated and submitted for referral back to us. Isn't that correct? And so council won't see it until after we see it again, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Because I was thinking, well, maybe we could even signal to council that some of these greater issues are important to us. And it's an important community and citywide discussion on some of these, but there's not really an opportunity for them to weigh in until the changes are fully formed. So my thought doesn't really apply, I guess, but I'm looking for ways for us to send signals or something. I mean, I think staff, you already said staff appreciates many of these suggested amendments, but feels like the process isn't appropriate yet. So I'm meandering, but
I can take sorry.
Go ahead. I'm finished.
I can take a stab at the good question, the good meander. I think that if the Plan Commission feels, really confident and wants to provide strong guidance on some of these and still wants staff to package others up to bring back to you and march through the formal process, that's totally fine. No decision that the Plan Commission isn't making a final decision tonight. And so, I would err on the side of, if there are certain proposed amendments from the public that you want to know more about, you want to think more about over the course of the next couple of months, you could signal that to staff tonight as well.
Thank you, Heather and Commissioner Heck. And I'll just a reminder, this is a work session meeting, so discussion and meandering is encouraged. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this whole process confuses me. So is this like part of the ordinance for the plans that we have to do this every so often? I mean, is that like, I don't understand why are we doing this? but we are not doing we open this to the public, but yet we don't have the engagement from the public that is needed to make decisions. Like what is the disconnect there? And again, this is my first time going through this, so I'm still trying to understand the logic of having this discussion and this input seeking exercise. Like, I can please help me understand that?
Certainly. So the state does require that cities update their comprehensive plans every 10 years. So this interim update is something that we're doing above and beyond what our statutory requirement is. We also did one similar to this in 2012 after the adoption of our first comprehensive plan in 2006. So there are a couple of things driving this one. One is the need to incorporate the new health and safety element that really encapsulates the work of many city agencies. So that's driving it. Another is that we, kind of following the recipe of what was done in 2012, we thought that an update, a refresh of the generalized future land use map to reflect all of the plans that had been adopted or amended in the interim since 2018 was important to do. I will say that we went back and forth on whether to open a public opportunity for ideas like the 81 we received. In 2012, when we opened that, I think we received 15 or 20 ideas from the public. Some were, just a few were actually moved forward by the council ultimately. So we did not anticipate the volume of requests that were received, the 81 that were received. And I think with some exceptions, the general theme is, hey, let's add more density. Let's open up more ways to accommodate more housing, which I think we as staff and I feel that you as plan commissioners definitely appreciate. The disconnect perhaps on the public engagement is that when you're looking at a future land use map for an entire city, you either need a lot of time or you need fewer locations so that you can go talk with residents or at least make it make a better effort to do the public engagement when more dramatic changes are happening. I think that what you can see in many of these, the list of 81 is that the changes are pretty significant and maybe coming from a resident who doesn't even live in the area, or certainly someone who doesn't own the property or have any connection with the property owner. That wasn't necessarily the case in 2012. I think we received most of the proposals from property owners. And so I think it's just a general concern. I can speak for myself, working with many elected officials over the years. Process is very important in Madison, and we want to make sure that there's at the very least knowledge and knowledge of changes being proposed. So that's why perhaps you're seeing some caution from staff as far as recommending the number of these that move forward. We think the best way to handle a lot of these requests, some of which we don't disagree with, is through a more robust planning process. And that's what we're trying to do in a much more streamlined way with the new planning framework. We're not going to have 70 neighborhood plans anymore that may get updated every 30 years. We're moving toward this decennial marching around the city in 12 large geographies, which we think is a reasonable amount of time to right size the public engagement on some of these changes. Now, meanwhile, some of the language changes that we're pursuing in this effort will open up opportunities citywide for more flexibility, more latitude. One example being the churches that came up earlier. When a church, is no longer in service, we've proposed language that provides a more flexible way for those properties to redevelop at greater densities than what surrounds them today. And you heard comments hoping that that language could be opened up even more. And so we are trying with this effort. Wait a minute, I want to provide two more examples. With this effort, we're also trying to make language more flexible about what an employment area really means. In the comprehensive plan today, employment means basically minimal or hardly any or no residential is really appropriate in those employment areas. we want to recognize that in employment and general commercial land use areas, we need to have some flexibility to incorporate residential. So that's a general language change that we think, and I think we've heard from the Plan Commission, is important to encapsulate within an effort like this at the midpoint of the 10-year period. So we're trying to make some broad citywide language changes that provide more latitude and flexibility, and we're acknowledging the need for a few, up to 12 of the changes that have come up to us from the public as being appropriate to go ahead and move forward with. And that's where I'll leave it. I'll look to my colleagues, Kirsty, Brian, Ben, if there's anything more to add to that good question.
Thank you, Heather.
If I can also add, and so other communities handle how they consider changes to their comp plan map different ways. And so some communities might have a every year process where they take in proposals for changes to their comp plan map. Maybe they take in proposals every couple of years. They all have different systems. And so for us, we do feel like we'd like to provide that relief valve, that opportunity to propose a change until that next area plan might happen, that next company update might happen. And so here we're offering that 5-year kind of relief valve, where if there are situations where a different land use than what's shown in the comp plan map might be appropriate, that the Plan Commission and city could consider that. And so I think that we just feel that there is a need to provide some sort of opportunity to consider a change rather than waiting 10 years between comp plan updates. And so I think that's a pretty key part. We want to provide the opportunity. The bar is pretty high, we think, because we'd prefer it to happen more organically through a planning process or some of the more notification, more consideration. But we do think having that opportunity is valuable, and in some of these cases, staff is recommending a change based on the public comment.
One more question, and I leave it at that. When it comes to that terminology that keeps on popping up about natural occurring affordable housing, is that language used on the plans today?
I'll jump in and try that. I don't believe so. Kirsty, I'll look at you. I don't know if that language is actually in the comprehensive plan because it's so difficult to define.
Thank you. That was going to be my question.
I'm sorry.
That was going to be my next question. If it was, I mean, how do you define that? Like, I'm still struggling with that term.
My recollection is it actually is somewhere in the plan, and I hate to say that I don't know where, but I don't know where. I'm so sorry. I think it's either in the neighborhoods and housing chapter or within the Green and Resilient chapter. But let me look and see if there is one a definition in the glossary.
You can get back to me later. I just like, again, the term keeps coming up. I had done some reading from other cities, but they are very different than what our housing market here. So I'm kind of curious to know how we define that term. That is just buzzwords that we're using from other areas. So if you can find it whenever, point me to it, I appreciate it. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Great questions. Alder Rummel.
Greetings, everybody. I probably have to leave before you get through your talking through all this tonight anyway. And I just had a question, and I understand that the map notes are not the same as changes to the general land use map, but where will the map note discussion show up? Is that going to happen tonight or at some future meeting? I just want to know how it is that you will be discussing them. And I have another point after that.
Kirsty?
Yeah, I can answer that. So we do have that included in the materials. There's a link to the specific red line text, and I think we hope to get to it at the next. Maybe we would get to it tonight, but I think we would definitely get to it as we continue to discuss item 2 on the agenda.
The reason I ask is there were some at like near the end of the list that were not in anything that in item number G that you were referring to. I don't think, although I could be wrong, so don't quote me. But just wondering if the ones that the staff note said no, we're not going to do that because it's not a map change. It's when those get discussed. But thank you for your answer. And then my second thing is just sort of off of what Heather just said. About the employment language. And while I have worked with Heather over the years on the CAP East District and how we, during that planning process, said that the north side would be more residential and the south side would be more employment. And I always struggled with like, well, how much residential can go in? And I know, I think we managed that process pretty well, but I just want to remind the Plan Commission that even making that decision of sort of dividing maybe what might seem arbitrarily the corridor was based on almost a decade of planning about employment. Like, how do we grow jobs? You know, the Isthmus 2020 plan. And there were quite a few others that said how many jobs that we need for our future. Now we're talking about how many housing units we need, not how many jobs. But I just want to make sure that before we, you know, just say, oh, well, we need housing everywhere, we also look at, you know, how are we also growing jobs? Because maybe East Wash looks very luscious for housing, but maybe Ephemerite doesn't. You know, for example, I'm just picking something that seems more industrial. So just, I just want to make sure we have a more, you know, robust conversation about that. And I will, that's all I have for now. And I appreciate your work on this. And, oh, one more thing. And the churches thing is really important. I sort of stumbled on that myself. And I think, to me, I would just add that it matters if it's on an arterial street versus inside of a neighborhood. But I think more density than, say, a single family, you know, level of density obviously is required, but it doesn't mean it needs to be what you would put on, you know, like a major a neighborhood or a collector street. So I think we should be conscious of that. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Rummel. Alder Bennett.
Thanks. A question for Heather. So I know that in the requested amendments, a lot were centering around the Regent Street area, particularly to capture the audience of student housing and for increased growth in that area. I've heard from the 8th district that they would be supportive of such a change, and even residents, as we saw with the outpour of students that came out to speak about the need for affordable housing and just housing in general. So it seems like the stakeholders that we would engage in further discussion are already supportive of this change. So I'm wondering, who else do we need to engage in this discussion?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Alder Bennett. I think Regent Street did have a collection of very focused ideas for amending the comprehensive plan. And one of the issues with a lot of those requests is that they were actually far more specific than what is handled in the comprehensive plan. Some of them were related to changing the building height by 2 stories. The comprehensive plan is a little bit more general than that, and so it's really difficult to find a mechanism to accommodate that change within the comprehensive plan. I do think that, you know, when the Near West Area Plan is done, there will probably be a lot of recommended changes at that point. But I also do want to point out that the Regent Street South Campus Plan, as adopted over 12 years ago, still has thousands and thousands and thousands of units hundreds of thousands of square feet that could be redeveloped along that stretch that are still sitting with older uses that may be considered to be underutilized sites. So we think there's a lot of room for redevelopment in that area as the Regent Street South Campus neighborhood plan stands today. And certainly look forward to more discussions about intensive redevelopment in that area.
I see. Thank you. And on that note, though, I was very interested in like the amendments to increase the height. I know that there's like an immediate need in that area, so I'm wondering what mechanism we would go about that. Like, it seems like there's no way that we could fit it within the comprehensive plan, or could we? And if not, like, what would be the mechanism that would have a more immediate effect?
Sure, I think there are a few options, and I'll look at my colleagues again if anyone wants to weigh in on these. One would be, and I don't strongly recommend this because it's not seen far and wide across the city, but a special map note in that area to the comprehensive plan, noting that additional height beyond that in the Regent Street South Campus plan could be considered, on a site-by-site basis. That type of map note could be considered. As a manager of the planning division, I'm reluctant to say that we could take on an amendment to the Regent Street South Campus neighborhood plan anytime soon. I think it would be far better to wait for the Near West area plan, which is going to begin in a few years. But that would be another way about it, to go in and do a series of focused amendments to that existing neighborhood plan as it exists today. I think the comprehensive plan future land uses are pretty well set up in that area to accommodate intensive redevelopment. And I don't think the changes are really needed in the comprehensive plan to facilitate that.
Okay, thank you so much. And I just wanted to also share a general comment and maybe request then that this area, and I guess I shouldn't speak and can't speak for my colleagues on the council in the 13th and the 8th district. However, speaking for myself, I see this as a very important or a very important way that we can address the student housing crisis. I know that with the area and demographic that it is quite unique outside of any other area in the city. In the next 5 years, an entire freshman class, or people that are freshmen now, will have filtered through the UW system, would have graduated, and that is like 4 or 5 years of students struggling to receive housing. So the need is there, and the need is great. And I don't think that our current city process meets that need. That said, I believe that I would hope that we could find some sort of path forward to have a more immediate effect. I do love Director Stouter's idea, or what you just stated, with making a specific note in that area. I think that would be one way to at least signal to those that are interested in developing that we can consider additional height. Especially, I will also just note, like, as a personal thing, I feel like this area, because of its proximity to both campus and downtown, should be considered in like the neighborhood plan sooner than 2028, because of the demographics and how it is more cohesive with the downtown area. But I digress. Ultimately, I hope that the commission can consider adding a note, and or just look a little bit deeper into recommendations 17 through 40. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Bennett. Alder Govindarajan, and I apologize for undoubtedly mispronouncing your name.
Hi, no, you're completely fine. Thank you. And I do want to apologize. I've been in and out of this meeting as I have been in 3 Zoom meetings the past hour. So I might have missed a couple things, and I'm sorry if I do repeat anything. But I just want to kind of reinforce that as a District 8 Alder, a lot of the amendments are in my district, and I understand some of the concerns that we have with the amendments that now might not be the best time to do so, especially with engagement. But I believe, like Alder Bennett said earlier, we had 1,700 students reach out just 2 months ago, and 300 sent emails to alders saying that they want to see more housing. Generally speaking, just more housing. They want to see more dense housing, and they would love it if it could be affordable housing. That's a level of engagement that we have not seen in the city in a very long time. And it's something that I think is what this commission is looking for. There's about a dozen amendments just in District 8 itself. Pretty much my entire district is being amended in some way throughout this process through the proposals. I would really like to see the commissioners on this commission vote in favor of bringing this up for discussion and talking about it more, because it is really important, and students are completely in favor of this. There are not many people opposed to this as an idea, and that's something that's very different from different neighborhoods where you'll see more dense housing proposed and there will be some kind of opposition, but that's not the case in this with these proposals. So sorry, I'm also out of breath. But I would really love to see if these amendments can go forward. Just specifically talking about my district, it's north of Camp Randall, and then around East Campus Mall and north of Regent Street, and then around Randall and East Campus Mall. But understandably, I understand some of your concerns, but would love to see if there's any modifications that can be made to the amendments to make sure that they do fit within this plan. That would be great, because I understand some of them are also a little bit too detailed for this specifically as well.
Thank you,
That's all.
Alder.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers?
Thank you, Chair. Are we still on questions for staff?
Yes, you can feel free to provide. It's kind of a mixture of questions and comments at this point, so please
Okay,
feel
all right.
free.
I'm sorry. Question for Heather. I understand that many of the amendments, the 26 amendments that were put forth by DMI, were perhaps did not fit in the protocol, and that there were not an easy way to interpret the specific height recommendation. Wouldn't it be possible, though, for staff to say, okay, they're recommending 10 stories here, there is a mapping classification that can accommodate that, and we will then translate that and say, find the right zoning class and say, this is what they mean by this, and make the determination on that, not on, oh, well, they recommended a specific height for this parcel and we don't deal with specific heights. But can't we have the flexibility to interpret what was meant by that recommendation and go from there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Much of that stretch of Regent Street is planned for a version of mixed use, either neighborhood mixed use or community mixed use on the north side. And the Regent Street South Campus plan provides recommended maximum heights of 8 to 12 stories along most of the north side of Regent Street. So if someone were to come in today with a proposal for a mixed use building or a residential building that's 8 stories or 12 stories, where the Regent Street South Campus plan indicates that, it could certainly move forward within the CMU or community mixed use land use area. It could be an alternative to reflect part of that north side of the street as RMU or regional mixed use. I think that would be, an option to consider and more appropriate within this kind of general framework that we're working with. That said, the Plan Commission would still need to look back on that Regent Street South Campus plan and those height recommendations whenever they were considering a conditional use in that area. So by and large, it's not much of a difference to what the Plan Commissioners would be considering. But yes, to put it simple, that area on the north side of Regent Street could change to a darker shade of purple for our regional mixed use.
Well, thank you. And if the chair will allow, I'll just make a few other comments, general comments that I would like.
Yes, of course.
And just some observations sitting on that. First of all, thanks to staff for all this hard work, to Kirsty, to Heather, to Ben, to Brian. While this may not have been a complete, robust engagement process, there was certainly a lot of work that got us to this point, and I appreciate it all. I do think it's telling that we went from 15 recommendations from the public 10 years ago to 81 today. And I think that is clearly that our residents do understand that we're in a housing crisis. Our residents do agree that we need more housing at all different price levels, and we need to accommodate that in specific ways. We need to increase the predictability and reduce the uncertainty on the part of developers who are looking to develop in particular areas of our city where we think that growth is appropriate. For example, Regent Street, I want to say thanks for approving on the consent agenda at your recent meeting the development project at 1233 Regent Street. But I will say that the developer, Mike Slavish of Wisconsin Housing Preservation Corps, was uncertain and called me several times, worried about whether this would go through, this conditional use for 5 stories. And I spoke with staff, and Mike had spoken with staff, and staff had indicated up until the last minute that they were somewhat ambivalent and neutral, because that the Regent Street South Campus area plan that Heather referred to that was done in 2008 called for 4 stories in that parcel. Now, we were able to harness and marshal our efforts and our arguments in a convincing way, and you all went along with it. And similarly, some years back, the Associated Bank development was approved at 5 stories. But removing that uncertainty, I think, will allow for areas like Regent Street to experience the type of development that we feel is really appropriate for this area. For we have a TIF district here on Regent Street. We have the need for more student housing. We have the need for more housing in general, and in particular, affordable housing, and an area that would be walkable for employees who work at the hospitals and who work on campus, for teachers who work in the area schools. So removing that uncertainty, and I understand also, and I'll wrap up my comments so you can get on, but I understand this idea of waiting for portions of this for the West Area Plan, because I do think there is a need for particularly folks in the interior of neighborhoods who might be a little bit alarmed if something changes from low residential to low medium residential and would like to be included in that process. I agree with holding off till those sub-area plans for some big blanket change like that. But for these other areas, that some of the other recommendations that Jason Elstrup and Rob Gottschalk and the folks at DMI put forward. And by the way, Jason has been chairing a gathering of folks, basically called the Regent Street Revitalization Task Force, loosely defined. We've been meeting for over 2 years with participants. Upwards to 40 or 50 people show up at each Zoom meeting. Representatives of the hospitals, the university, the local businesses along Regent Street, elected officials, concerned individuals. In fact, there was a walking tour that went from Panera Bread in the parking lot over there near West Washington, all the way down towards Hotel Red, looking at parcel by parcel, what is happening, what could happen. So the fact that DMI got involved in putting forth 26 of the 81 recommendations was not happenstance. It was part of a long, determined effort to see positive things come to this critical area along Regent Street. I want to say thanks to staff for, I believe it's 23, 24, and 41 recommending on the south side of Regent Street and the 1100, 1200, and 1300 blocks that they would go to community mixed use. I understand the concerns of the parcel at where Hong Kong Cafe is. If there is a way to accommodate their development aspirations there, that there would be some flexibility, I would support that. But generally, I think staff has been on target and really well focused with this. But I am troubled, and I will close by echoing what Jason Ilstrup said, that it is a bit frustrating to be told to wait until the West Area Plan is done, because some of this feels like we can't wait 3 years. We can't really wait 4 years. And I'm tempted to say, well, if instead of waiting, we'll just go put forth amendments to that South Campus Regent Street plan, but that would tie up staff time in a way that I don't think staff really would appreciate. So this whole process really is an opportunity for all of us policymakers to try to facilitate and create the predictability and remove the uncertainty of those who are involved in trying to come up with great development projects for areas like Regent Street. And I want to encourage you to take staff recommendations and your best thoughts for not only Regent Street, but other parts of our city to facilitate the type of development we need that apparently the public is on our side and wants to see happen as well. So thank you for listening to my comments. Thank you all for the hard work that you do for our city.
Thank you, Alder. So I'm going to call on the remaining commissioners for questions, and then I would like to start making our way through the staff memo. We will continue with discussion and questions, but specifically start at number 1 so we can begin giving some guidance to staff. So Commissioner Shepherd.
Just 2 quick points. I want to follow up with Alder Rummel's comment about the places of worship. Perhaps we can have a bit more, once again, research on that. Is this a national trend? Or is this unique to Madison in terms of places of worship being replaced, with other uses? And also, what are maybe the costs and benefits of losing these places of worship? Are there benefits in terms of additional housing or commercial space? Are there additional, once again, tax revenues that can be generated, again, by, once again, transitioning or changing those places? The second point I'll make is, I think throughout this discussion, it may be, and I'm sure that Heather and others are thinking about this already, looking at staffing within planning. Do you have adequate staff to do what you need to do today? Do you have adequate staff to do what you need to do tomorrow? So again, we're not here to address that, but I think that's an issue with all of this, that the staff, they do a fantastic job with the resources that they have, but the challenges continue to mount. So we may need to, once again, look at that sometime in the future. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McCahill.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify one thing that I thought I heard earlier. That seems like an important point before we move on. The area plans for the near west and the near east side, based on the timelines we're talking about, could coincide with the next comp plan update, more or less. Sounds like there's a 50-50 chance that they'll be done by then or not. I know those area plans provide a better public process to talk through these things. If they are not done, am I hearing that the decennial update is a better opportunity to engage the public and possibly make those changes even without the the area plans being done?
Yeah, I can try to answer that. I think that, for the areas that we have not completed an area plan for, we would, go through a similar process to this one, interim update in which we would take in proposals from the public. it's hard to say exactly how that process will look 5 years from now. It's hard to say how in-depth the engagement would be, but it would be an opportunity to look at land uses again for those areas in which an area plan has not been completed.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to start specifically on discussion and any remaining questions on item 1 of the staff memo. So that is staff recommended revisions to the GFLU map. That would be for the neighborhood plans that we went over earlier, additions for annexations. I would, unless anyone opposes, my instinct is to hold on discussion of the map notes because that was included with the summary of the other plan text revisions. But I am open to if that's not, but if we could get through some of these, I would say more straightforward additions to incorporate neighborhood plans. Are there any questions, concerns, discussion on the first item of the staff memo? Any discussion? Is it fair to say there is general consensus? I'll take thumbs up at this point. We've done that before. Oh, Alder Figueroa Cole.
Just to make sure we're looking at the same thing. So we're talking about, can we maybe list the names? So like Elderberry Neighborhood Development, is that what we're discussing at this moment?
Yes, so the A through Q on that list, Elderberry through Reiner and DP, as well as the McFarland annexation, intergovernmental agreement with Town of Cottage Grove, city-owned parks, and update areas impacted by recent approvals such as plats. Kirsty, would you like to add to that?
If it would help, I could share my screen and just show
Yes,
those things.
that would be great.
Okay, great.
That is better than me reading it off in short form. Thank you.
Yeah, especially for people who are visual like I am.
This is one of the few times when I had to print many things.
Okay. Sorry, now I have to advance a couple of slides here. Okay, so it would include the plans listed here. And then there's an additional slide that includes the changes that are not within the plans, and I can pull that one up as well.
Is the map, does the map happen to be updated with the ones that you approved or not?
Yes, the map does include these. Here's a we have a static version of the map, and then if you go to the interactive version, you can also turn the staff recommended
Oh my God, okay.
outlines on. It's not as intuitive as I wish it was. So I don't blame you for missing it. I wish there was an easier way to make it visible. But so yeah, the black outlines then, and I can turn off the ones that are proposed by the public. So if you wanted a close look at any of them, you can zoom in and click on, for example, this one, just picking one at random.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
If I can just mention, I'll say ahead of time, Brian Grady, I use he, him pronouns on the plan division, work with Kirsty, Heather, Ben, and others. And so in many cases, so it's all these black outline areas that we're talking about captured by these items. And in many cases, most cases, when you all and the city in general approved these sub-area plans, we included a map, staff included a map that said, here's, for example, here's the South Madison plan. We're recommending this for adoption. And we included a map in that plan or in that Legistar item, the approval process. We said, here's how we would translate the South Madison land use recommendations into the comp plan GFLU map, because the categories are different between the sub-area plan, can be different between the sub-area plans, the comp plan map. So we've even included a map that kind of shows our work, tracks those changes. And so That's already been included for most cases, so that makes our job very easy. What we're doing is we're now getting the comp plan GFLU map in sync with all those plans we've adopted over the last 5 years. In some cases, we didn't show our work, and so we are basically translating categories in that sub-area plan and translating it into the comp plan. But right now, we don't have an ideal situation. We have all these sub-area plans that get approved, and we don't show them the comp plan until every 5 years. So we're trying to rectify that situation so that you don't look to a sub-area plan and see something different than the comp plan. So as Kirsty mentioned before, it's all about more just transparency, trying to keep this complicated whole planning thing less complicated.
Thank you for that clarification, Brian. Are there any further questions or discussion on this first item of the staff memo? Kirsty, would you mind stop sharing just so I can see people? Would folks give me either a thumbs up or thumbs down if we are giving general consensus to move forward with these amendments? I'm seeing thumbs up. Excellent. Staff, does that give you what you need for agenda item 1 minus the map notes? Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So we will move on to then item 2 on the staff memo, which is the public, the proposed amendments from the public. In this case, I think it would be very helpful if we could go through them one by one, and Kirsty could share their screen, and we can also determine perhaps at the if there are others beyond the green and yellow that we would like to discuss. I suppose that would be good to get out of the way now. Are folks ready to make that call? Commissioner Mendez.
So just a quick question. Are we going to go through them all really quick? And then you want us to maybe raise our hands if we want to pull it?
Yeah, we'll go
one way or
through
the other?
each green and yellow for sure individually, and at the end of each one say, yes, let's move ahead with this. We'll do a quick overview of that, say, yes, we're good to go and keep that as is, or and then also if there's others we want to add beyond the green and yellow to our discussion list, let's identify that.
So we're
Does
going
that
to go
make
green and yellow first, and then maybe start back at the top. And if we have ones we want to pull off at that point.
If folks are ready to identify which additional ones they would like to go through now, then we will just start, we will identify all of those, and we will start at the top and go through the ones that we specifically want to discuss, understanding that the rest are kind of off the table for right now. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, so please identify by number if there are additional public amendments beyond green and yellow that you would like to discuss. Commissioner Heck.
I still want to kick the can down the road and do the green and yellow first,
Green
and
and
then have the messy discussion.
Okay, okay, let's get the easy discussion out of the way. You can keep throwing me through a loop, but I'll run with it. Kirsty, could we start with the greens first?
Yes, yeah, we can do that. Let me
I'm sure you have just a few tabs open right now to share your
yeah,
screen.
only 17 to
Yeah.
28 of them. Let me see. Okay, so would you like me to share the map then? Okay.
That would be very helpful.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we're starting with the ones that are in green, we would be starting with the Regent Street area. The first one that's in green is number 16, I believe.
Correct.
And okay. I will share my screen. Thank you for your patience. Okay. So number 16, and did we want to do a very brief staff summary or intro?
Yes, a very brief summary of that row in the spreadsheet would be excellent.
Okay. So application 16 is this triangular block here that starts at Monroe and runs along Regent Street. I would say that this is one of the applications that was submitted by Downtown Madison Inc. And this was one that we approved that kind of stands out from many of the others because this one included a change from one land use to a different land use, whereas a lot of the other proposed amendments from DMI were not regarding a specific land use change, but a change in maximum height. So for application 16, the request was to change CMU to, community mixed use to regional mixed use. And the underlying sub-area plan, Regent Street South Campus plan, recommends 10+2 for LEED Silver as a bonus in this area in terms of the heights. So staff felt that this was compatible with regional mixed use and are supportive of this change from CMU to RMU.
Thank you. Are there any questions on that green item? If not, I will take thumbs up as consensus to move forward. I'm scrolling to see thumbs. Okay, it looks like we have general consensus to move ahead with number 16 as recommended.
Okay, and then if we are continuing with the green, we would move on to number 21, which is in the same general vicinity. I think it's a little bit to the east here. So for application 21, I can probably give the summary for 21 and 22 at the same time. These are somewhat similar to the one that we just looked at, application 16. These requests are also changing the land use from community mixed use to regional mixed use. And the Regent Street South Campus plan for this area again recommends 10+2 for LEED Silver for this area. And staff felt that this is compatible with regional mixed use for the heights and land uses in this area.
Commissioner Mendez.
Yes, I have a question about 22. I believe that's currently under construction right now for a fairly decent sized building. Is there any specific reason why they're asking to change that now, or is it just kind of fits what that is anyway?
I don't think they included any additional details, but it looks like Heather would like to add something.
Yeah, I don't want to speak to the rationale for the request, but indeed that is under construction now, and RMU or regional mixed use would fit just fine for what is under construction today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, then I will ask for a general thumbs up to move ahead with this as recommended. Thank you all. Looks like we have consensus to move ahead with 21 and 22.
Okay, so then we have a couple that are in yellow for this general area. But we should I continue with green or should we?
Let's get the greens done.
Okay, let's go with the greens. I'm going to scroll through my spreadsheet and we will find the next green. It is number 43. Actually, that is also in this area. I do think I have the locations of many of these memorized. So 43 is this site. I may have zoomed in a little far, but it's just south of Regent Street, which is here, and it's along South Mills. Let me scroll in my spreadsheet here. So this proposal was submitted by the Alexander Company, and they are working with the Neighborhood House, which is located at this site. So the request for this application was to change this area from special institutional to neighborhood mixed use. I believe that they are currently working on proposed redevelopment, which I don't have a lot of the details about, but they're planning to keep the neighborhood house within the building as far as I know. And staff agrees that NMU would be appropriate for this site. And given that the Regent Street South Campus Area Plan already allows up to 8 stories for this site, we would also support community mixed use, which would allow for up to 6 stories at this location. And so, yeah, I think that's a good summary.
Thank you. I guess would it be helpful for us to indicate if we would support specifically the NMU or CMU?
That would be helpful.
Would any commissioners like to opine on that? Alder Field.
Thank you. I'll chime in for CMU. I think this area meets a lot of our goals. That seems to make a lot of sense to me.
Thank you, Alder Field. Any other comments on that? Otherwise, I will ask if there's general consensus on CMU, which is 2 to 6 stories. Alder Evers.
Yeah, I'm just curious why not go with NMU since that was requested. Did staff suggest that they prefer CMU to NMU?
I believe that Kirsty just clarified that the underlying plan allows, I believe, up to 8 stories, and CMU is 2 to 6, so it still falls well within that. Would provide a little more flexibility while we're doing this. So I don't mean to put words in your mouth though, so please clarify, Steph.
That's correct, and I think Heather would like to also add something.
Yeah, just to mention that I believe other staff have spoken with this applicant, and they're also generally supportive of CMU or community mixed use as well. It's just a little bit more intensive, and I think a little bit more in line with what they hope to propose on the site.
So from what you're saying, Alexander Company are fine with CMU even though they asked for NMU? Correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right. As long as that's the case.
Ben, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I just want to mention one other thing. There is language in the comp plan that allows, neighborhood plans, adopted neighborhood plans to kind of adjust the maximum heights that are specified in the comp plan. So either, plus or minus. So if the neighborhood plan is specifying that there's up to 8 stories allowed there, that could still be possible under CMU, even though the comp plan specifies 6 maximum. So really CMU kind of matches the neighborhood plan a bit better than NMU does, and is a little bit more consistent.
Thank you, Ben. Alder Field.
Oh, apologies. I didn't mean to raise my hand again. If it's up.
All right. No worries. Okay. So I guess I will ask again for a thumbs up if you indicate support for adjustment to CMU for this parcel. Seeing thumbs up, we have consensus to move ahead with number 43 at CMU.
Okay, the next one would be number 51. I believe that is in the Marquette area. Let's see. The map does not want to load. Let's see. So for this one, 51. Oh shoot, I'm sorry. I'm not sure why I did that. You'll have to bear with me. So this is located on East Washington Ave. So this is one of the amendments that staff made for it was essentially related to other amendments to the East Washington Capital Gateway Corridor Plan for the blocks down here between Livingston and Brearley. So there were updates there that would allow, within that amendment that happened in, I think it was 2020 and 2021, that would allow for residential uses in addition to employment uses. So staff felt that it was appropriate to make a similar update to this area. It was somewhat of a staff interpretation, as Brian mentioned earlier, that the amendment to the 2020 and 2021 plans, the Capital Gateway Corridor Plan, did not specifically show what land uses in the GFOU map should be updated for those areas. So it was a bit of a staff interpretation for those blocks, and a person from the public pointed out that they felt that employment was most appropriate for this block, and staff is fine with that recommendation. Really what I think it comes down to is it could probably be fine with either recommendation there, because the neighborhood plan specifically says that residential can be allowed as a secondary use at this site. Is there anything else my other colleagues would like to add? This one is a little bit more tricky.
Sure, I'll chime in on this one too. Thanks, Kirsty. So just to be clear, the staff recommended land use here was regional mixed use, or the purple that you're seeing on the map now. I believe the comment from the public would like to see this reverted back to pink or employment. Staff is comfortable with either one. Honestly, the underlying neighborhood plan, as Kirsty mentioned, shows predominantly employment with some residential. And I'll say that if, this is zoned traditional employment, if this comes into the Plan Commission with a conditional use request for a mixed use building that includes residential, it could be approved either way, whether it's shown as regional mixed use or as employment. Again, the public recommendation was for this to revert back to employment as it is today. Staff is fine with that. So this is really a Plan Commission decision that staff doesn't have a strong feeling on.
Thank you. Alder Field.
Thank you. Just a question for staff on this one. Does the distinction between employment or RMU for this site have implications for the story height of a proposed development if that were to take place here?
No, great question. It doesn't. So this area is really governed, the height of this area is really governed by the Urban Design District 8. And so it wouldn't matter either way, whether the generalized future land use wouldn't matter with regard to the height.
Alder Figueroa Cole.
But if I understand it correctly, if we revert back, they will have to come back to us to review a conditional, under a conditional use.
If either way they would. So the site is zoned traditional employment today. And my guess is that if this site were to redevelop in the future, the Plan Commission is going to see a conditional use request in any case, regardless of whether the future land use shown here is purple, regional mixed use, or pink, employment.
So then I don't understand what is the interest in changing it? Like I don't get the point of it.
Sure, I can reiterate that. So the Capital Gateway neighborhood plan shows this site as predominantly employment with some opportunity for residential. That's the same underlying neighborhood plan recommendation for the 800 and 900 blocks of East Washington Street, a little bit further here to the west that Kirsty showed. So that was kind of the basis that staff used to say, well, let's change this site to purple or regional mixed use as well. I think what the resident pointed out is that, well, let's not change it to regional mixed use. Let's keep it as employment because it wasn't the focus of a focused neighborhood plan amendment like the other 2 blocks were back in 2020 and 2021. Again, staff does not have a strong feeling about this. In either case, the Plan Commission would likely see a conditional use request for a mixed use building in traditional employment zoning. And I think could move forward either way, regardless of whether it's purple or pink.
Alder Heck, or Commissioner Heck.
Thanks. Heather, those two other RMU areas that were recommended for change actually have primarily multifamily residential buildings that were approved before they were changed to RMU or RMX or something. They were zoned E, and Plan Commission approved those buildings, which have, I can't remember, maybe the one on the 900 block has one floor of commercial-esque, but it's not like they need, we somehow required them to have primary use employment. I mean, we approve that. There's a precedent of approving large multi-story residential, effectively all residential buildings in employment districts, right?
Yes, just to be clear, that 900 block where Kirsty's pointer is right now is the site of the Hotel Indigo, the WIDA office building.
Oh, I meant 800 then, sorry.
Yeah, the 800 block is where we see the Moxie and the also the in progress, the old Gardner Bakery building that's predominantly residential. So,
and in the other block that you first mentioned, we've already approved a large residential tower facing East Wash as I think leaving it as E is just fine. It doesn't seem like it reduces our flexibility.
Right.
Alder Field. Oh, you are on mute.
If my hand is raised, I didn't mean to raise it. My apologies.
Sorry.
Was it up?
Yes, it
Oh,
is
okay.
up currently. Okay.
Just for the record, Zoom is acting kind of weird when you're on the cell phone.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
keeps
is hard.
raising the hand, lowering the hand. It's crazy.
Yeah. Completely agree. Okay. So before us is keeping that area as E. So I would ask commissioners if there's consensus, be a thumbs up to keep it as E. I'm seeing general consensus to move it ahead with E. Okay. 77, 78.
77 and 78. Okay. I have forgotten where those are. Oh, those are related to map notes.
Oh, map notes. Okay.
So, but we can discuss those.
Okay. It's
up to you.
It's green on here, so let's do it.
So for this one, this is a comment that we received on a map note that's located in the Sassy neighborhood. I'm just going to turn on the map notes layer. And so the map note that was included here back in 2018 reads, if it's a little small, I'll just read it. The city may consider buildings taller than 4 stories in this contiguous NMU area for large parking lots and vacant areas. So that's this area here in the Sassy area. So this is where Winnebago meets Atwood. When staff reviewed this comment from the public, we agreed that the map note could be removed. It's staff's recollection that this one was added during the 2018 process because staff had originally proposed CMU for this area, and some residents provided feedback that they would rather see NMU. So at the request of the neighborhood, the Plan Commission decided to go with NMU, but include this map note to allow a little bit more flexibility for considering buildings that are taller than 4 stories for large parking lots or vacant areas. It seems to be the case that there's only one parking lot left that this map note would apply to. As I recall, I believe it is this parcel here, which is a parking lot adjacent to the Trinity Lutheran Church on the corner of First and Winnebago. So there's only one remaining large parking lot. So staff feels that this map note is fine to remove. And it may help if I pull up this version, which I've got the transparency on in the aerial photo underneath.
Commissioner Heck?
Thanks. Kirsty, I also read in the input comments that being in the TOD overlay would allow a conditional use consideration for stories above 4. Is that true?
I think so, and I would I guess defer to Heather for the specifics.
Sure. So in any case, regardless, someone can seek a conditional use approval for height exceeding 3 or 4 stories. I think in the transit-oriented development area, the comprehensive plan note even recommends that additional height is supported. So there's more certainty, more, I guess, predictability that additional height could be supported, since this is in a transit-oriented development area.
Okay, thank you.
I guess it seems to me a bit like removing this map note is going backwards a little bit, and my sense is the intent of this is to make some changes to accommodate, additional growth or other changes that were not contemplated or appropriate earlier. And while this may now only impact one parking lot, there's still one parking lot. And I guess I'm not really sure why this small detail needs to be removed. Maybe it won't be applicable, but it's not hurting anything, I guess, for being in there. That's just my comment on that. Any other comments or discussion from the group? Commissioner Heck?
I tend to agree with Commissioner Solheim that it's true that conditional uses can be asked for, but we're reducing predictability for one little lot, and I think it might be fine the way it is. Sorry, and I meant the way it's currently written, not as the amendment is written.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I don't want to be presumptuous, but without any other comments, I will ask if there's consensus on keeping that map note in, so not moving forward with this amendment to remove the map note. I get a thumbs up on that. Thumbs up. Okay. So on that one, we will not move ahead with the recommendation, but rather keep the map note in.
Okay, so that gets us through all of the green ones. Let's jump back. I believe this would be in the Regent Street area, 23 and 24. It's taking a moment to load here, sorry. Okay, so 23 and 24 are, if it's easy enough to see, this is Regent Street there, And so these are regarding the northern halves of these blocks that front Regent Street. This version does not have the street labels on, but I think so Monroe's over here. So let me pull up my spreadsheet about this one. So for 23 and 24, the request was to change the land use from neighborhood mixed use to community mixed use. So neighborhood mixed use would allow typically 4 stories and then CMU up to 6. The Regent Street South Campus Plan recommends 4 stories along this area for the northern half of this part of the block here for both 23 and 24. That has frontage on Regent, and 3 stories for the southern halves of both of these blocks, 23 and 24. So given that this stretch is within the TOD overlay and other 5-story redevelopments have recently been approved for this area, staff feels that changing the northern section of the block to CMU could be considered, but would like to see what Plan Commission would recommend there. We don't have strong feelings either way, but it could be considered. So that CMU would be up to 6 stories. And then we recommend keeping LMR or low medium residential on the southern halves of both of these blocks. And that would be to just transition down toward the neighborhood there. And I think that, I guess I can leave it there. Go ahead.
Commissioner Spencer.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so kind of a dumb question. So if we would approve this to community mixed use, and then with the TOD overlay, does that mean that the number of stories could go up even more than 6?
I don't think so. Let's see what Heather has to say.
So the TOD overlay interacts with the base zoning, not really as much with the base generalized future land use map as we see here. So let's say that the base zoning district along this stretch is traditional shopping street, or TSS. Since it's in the transit oriented development overlay, 4 stories is permitted by right. And I think this change from NMU, neighborhood mixed use, to CMU, community mixed use, on our generalized future land use map would simply signal support for perhaps something greater than 4. Community mixed use is 2 to 6. Again, the Plan Commission has readily approved 5-story buildings in this general area. And Kirsty, I believe just next door to 23 and 24 is number 42. Is that right? It's sort of the same staff recommendation. So that whole stretch, those 3 blocks, we're recommending that we're comfortable with the shift from NMU to CMU for those halves of the blocks.
Okay, thank you. I completely conflated the underlying zoning with the generalized land use map. So I'm glad I asked that question, because I would have, that's what mixed me up a little bit. And I just had a comment. I get the urgency on creating more stories and creating more housing here at Regent, especially for students, because it seems like every year, there's more, more students and more need for housing, especially affordable housing. And I just, I want to accommodate that. I want to take away the uncertainty for moving forward with that. But it does give me a little bit of a pause to amend the plans, because, the plans were done with a lot of public participation, and there was a group of stakeholders, a group of, residents and businesses that did work on that and agree to that. And I just feel, we always, not always, but when we have these meetings and we change things, we do hear from people that are unhappy about changing things in a plan that, was agreed upon. And we hear that and we take that to heart. And I just, that was my only input about, changing plans that and I know that plans need to be flexible and things change, economies change, populations change, but that was my only input on that, particularly in Regent Street and all the hard work that goes into these neighborhood plans and the unhappiness that it causes when we do make changes to those plans. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Heck.
Thanks. I first wanted to thank Commissioner Spencer for her question, because we all need to, your original question, this is a lot of detail and it's good to get reoriented, and I'm really glad you asked that question. And then actually kind of a little bit of a response to what you were just saying. I think the justification for this flies, in my opinion, that yes, the plan said 4 stories, but the TOD overlay district, our considerations of that were very public with a lot of community engagement. So does it equal the influence of a plan? I don't know, but it wasn't just out of the blue by any means. So I support this concept because of the combination of the plan with the TOD overlay. I do worry that there are a bunch of other amendments. I don't really know that if I use that rationale, I'm going to have to approve all those too, but we'll see. That's why I'm glad we're doing it in this order. Thanks.
Thank you. Alder Evans.
Yes, thank you. Well, first to respond to Commissioner Spencer's concerns, I will say, if it's at all reassuring, that I've been very public in talking to the neighborhood, to the Greenbush and Violet's neighbors about this process. They realize that the current plan is dated, that it's 15 years old. And I think it's telling, and I mentioned this in my remarks, my written remarks for 1233 Regent Street that you just passed. It wasn't that long ago that this neighborhood would have opposed a 5-story building in this site. It would have opposed anything over 4 stories, but there was not a single voiced opposition from any resident in Violet or Greenbush. I think generally speaking, residents in these neighborhoods are aware that we need to have higher buildings, more units and density along these transit routes. If for anything, that it relieves some of the pressure that they're beginning to feel in the interior of their neighborhoods. So they're starting to see that accepting the idea that there'll be taller buildings on these routes might mean less of the, their more fearful changes, let's say. And if that's helpful for you to get to the point of approving this and seeing the logic, I feel strongly as the alder for this district that residents are in support of this change. But I do have a question for Heather and perhaps Kirsty, either one. Could you speak a little bit more, particular in the 1100 block, when Matt Arrow, who represents the development interests of the owners of Hong Kong Cafe, of really this notion of keeping the second half of that block at LMR, where we're moving to community mixed use in the northern half. I'm aware that many of the structures on that half of those blocks, that's where we have a lot of the student housing in District 13, but it's very dilapidated. It's quite run down. And while I'm not particularly interested in upzoning until we can get to a point where there's more of an agreement with the university regarding some kind of income eligibility rules that would allow for some kind of affordable student housing in this area, what would happen if within a year or two we could work some of those details out with the university and it became possible to do 4 stories, 3 or 4 stories of affordable student housing along that southern half of that block, replacing naturally occurring, already existing affordable student housing, but that is really run down, with affordable student housing that's new and dynamic and a real contribution to the neighborhoods. What would LMR prevent that, or would there be flexibility for the city to move forward with a good project that would emerge?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm going to offer an example elsewhere in your district that's not necessarily an affordable project, but it's I think it's at South Park Street in Drake. We don't have to scroll there, but it's a project where you have, I think, a 4 to 6 story building on South Park that gradually goes down to kind of a townhome scale, 2 or 3 story element on the back side. It's all connected. It's all one building. And I think this mix that you see here of I'll say purple on the northern half and LMR on the southern half would still allow for a single building redevelopment solution on the site. You know, you'd have perhaps a lower fewer stories on the back side, on the south side, than you would up on Regent Street. So yeah, I think that could move forward.
You might have 6 stories on Regent Street itself and step down to 4 or 3 stories on Bowen Court.
Yeah, I think something like that could work, and a future plan commission or this plan commission could find that whatever rezoning and the conditional use were consistent with the comprehensive plan and the Regent Street plan as well. So I think that that is possible. I think that I just want to say with the naturally occurring affordable housing, the city can't choose to only allow demolition of, quote, naturally occurring affordable housing if affordable housing is being put in its place. I mean, that's the conundrum and the tension that I think policymakers face with regard to upzonings and still the desire to keep naturally occurring affordable housing. And we just need to live in that tension and realize that cities have very limited control over that.
We don't need another core spaces controversy, but perhaps land banking could play a role here if the city were to purchase some land in this area for the purpose of affordable student housing. But that's another conversation at another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. That was actually going to be my question as well. I was remembering Heather, you talked about earlier that this is not necessarily parcel specific, so that these buildings could extend, beyond that purple footprint. Sorry, Alder Figueroa Cole, saw your hand.
I don't want to add more to what it has been said, but I do support these changes too. I'm driving and I just want to make it clear.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that, because I was just going to say I've heard comments in support of turning this yellow, I guess, to green. So I will ask just for thumbs up for those who are not in the car to indicate consensus with that. Thumbs up. Great. Thank you all. That one is green now.
Could I ask a clarifying question?
Of course.
Just to be certain, I think this is what the Plan Commission is recommending. So staff's recommendation was to keep to keep the southern half as LMR. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. That was probably confusing when I said turn yellow to green, and I realized that now. Yes, to move forward with the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so back to me. So was that in agreement 23, 24, and 42? I assume. I think we were discussing all 3 of them at once.
Correct.
I'm not sure. Oh yes, there's one more yellow on the spreadsheet. I think this might be the last one. So this is item 56, which is combined with 57 and 58, as it was submitted as 3 requests, but we've mapped it as 56, and it is on the north side of Madison, along CV, where CV meets Wheeler Road. So if I can provide a little context, the airport is right here in this brownish color. So this proposed amendment is this site here outlined in blue, located along CV where it meets Wheeler Road. And for this one, I think I was going to actually have Brian, if Brian Grady is still on, give the overview. And
Yep.
if, okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Yeah, so here, yes, this is a yellow because the applicant here for the 56 geography proposed a mix of, I believe, medium residential, low medium residential, and like open space for stormwater management. There was a map in the supporting materials for the proposals from the public. Here, we're recommending that the entire 56 geography there go to low medium residential LMR. And along with this, that kind of had us look to the area to the west a little bit where we show the purple. And so we're proposing a change even beyond the scope of the blue outline. So brief background, this is in the Cherokee Special Area Plan. That the purple right there is a neighborhood mixed use node recommended in that special area plan, mapped in the comp plan. It also showed that Cherokee Special Area Plan also showed development to the west of the 56 number there. There's going to, kind of plan streets, plan neighborhood that would develop this property, tie into the existing lots that are actually in the town of Burke to the north and northeast of 56. So kind of complete this neighborhood. But with Parks Division purchasing the property to the west of number 56 a few years back for open space, for in addition to the Cherokee Marsh conservation area, it's kind of leaves the 56 area a little more isolated. And so we're suggesting that the mixed use probably won't happen. It won't happen on the park's own land. The mixed use within 56 probably not the best place for mixed use because access to this area will not be quite ideal for more commercial and retail service type uses. But we do think that this area could have a mix of uses. And so right now we have some town of Burke homes, single family homes. We have some townhomes to the east there. So a bit of a mix. We think that adding to the mix of housing types in this area could be helpful. So we're recommending LMR, low medium residential, in all of 56. And we wanted to note too, and note in the staff comments that this is located along an arterial road, County Highway CV. And so the comp plan does include that asterisk that indicates that LMR areas along arterials could be considered for slightly higher uses. And so the LMR typically is 1 to 3 stories, 7 to 30 dwelling units per acre. It would be recommended for. The comp plan suggests that in some cases up to 70 DUs per acre and 4 stories could be found consistent with the plan or could be considered. And so 2 changes. One, we're proposing all 56 blue outline go to LMR, and then also we would make a change to remove that purple area, the neighbor mixed use area on the park's own property. And so appreciate the feedback and kind of expanded on the applicant's suggestion.
Thank you. Commissioner Heck.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask Brian, in LMR, there are opportunities in particular zoning categories for some commercial entities within multi-unit buildings, right?
That is a great question that I'm going to pass off to a colleague to see how we've handled that in the past.
I think very limited. They would need to be perhaps even accessory uses to the residential building itself.
Oh, like a coffee shop accessory to a residential building, right?
Perhaps, and even that in the LMR types of zoning districts like the TRV1, TRV2, those are really few and far between. I think that we tried to provide some more flexibility for those in recent zoning changes in the high density residential districts, the TRU1 and TRU2 districts. But I would say that really the predominant uses within the TRV districts, as I'll call them, is indeed residential. And there's some, schools, churches, things like that. But if it's in a residential building, it's going to be predominantly residential, maybe some home-based businesses, if that's something that you're thinking of, but not mixed-use buildings as you might envision them with a commercial first floor and residential units above.
Yeah, I guess I was, if there are no commercial nodes around there, I was thinking maybe some slight opportunity for something would help.
One of the zoning districts that we don't use a lot in this city is the limited mixed use zoning district, and that can certainly be mapped within LMR areas.
If necessary. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Alder Figueroa Cole has just a hand remaining up, but I will, oh, she does have a hand up. Okay, Alder Figueroa Cole. You are muted.
Dave, my hand is not raised on the cell phone. I
Oh,
swear to you.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss you. Okay, so the staff recommendation here is in the yellow for the LMR. Sorry. Is there general consensus to stick with the staff recommendation moving forward? Thumbs up. So, okay, seeing thumbs up, we will move ahead with the staff recommendation on that item. Okay, does that get us through our green and yellow?
Yes, that gets us through all of those.
That does. Okay, I guess I defer to staff and other commission members, knowing that we have just 15 minutes remaining. If we'd like to perhaps identify additional amendments to discuss and perhaps discuss at our next meeting, knowing that we can add more at that time. I think we may not have enough time to go through the text revisions and map notes. Thoughts? Alder Field?
Thank you. Yes, I think I'm still interested in talking more about 1 through 3, 17 through 42. I know that's a big chunk, but I have some comments about them broadly. And that is it, actually, those ones. And I'm happy to chime in with those, but noting the time and that other commissioners may have input on that question, I'm going to leave it there for now.
Thank you. So it's 1 through 3 and 17 through 42. Okay. Commissioner Hecht.
I have a suggestion about process.
Please do.
If staff, I mean, certainly staff is recording all of this, taking notes and such. If people are going to throw out numbers, amendment numbers that we should discuss, I think that would be great to do that now with the option to also add some later. But if staff could email us the list of amendments that are proposed, then maybe having had this lengthy conversation, I think we can discuss these in a much more reasonable manner than at least I could have at 5 o'clock when we started this meeting. Now that we've kind of dispensed with some of the rationale, I think the discussions about rationale. So I think we could go through them relatively quickly. I think the suggestion was at our next regular meeting, depending upon how heavy that agenda is. But yeah, if you can send the recommended ones to discuss that either come out right now or in the near future, that would be great.
I agree. This discussion has definitely helped frame review of the other public amendments. So if there are ones, as Alderfield mentioned, that you would definitely like to discuss and want to offer now, that's great, but that does not necessarily preclude you. Staff is agreeable to bring them up at our next meeting as well. One that I would not mind discussing is number 48, which was presented by the Marquette Neighborhood Association. Okay. And from staff, do you want to continue with any other items at this time or wrap things up to keep the text changes all together?
I would certainly look to what others think as well, but I think it might make sense to wrap up. I think it would be great to get a list of as many of them that Plan Commission would like to discuss at the next meeting now, if possible, in case residents are interested. And then, yeah, I think we should continue with the next meeting, but would love to hear what others think.
Heather?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think so. We have 1 through 3, 17 through 42, 48. If there are others you know of now, fantastic. I think we can talk with Vice Chair Solheim, who will be chairing the next regularly scheduled meeting as well on September 18th, and make sure to hold time in that meeting for this informal discussion portion of the meeting so that we can continue. But again, we would greatly appreciate knowing now or via email soon if there are among these 81 items, if there are others you want to discuss on the 18th, the sooner we can know, the better, and we can prepare to march through them, just as Kirsty did tonight so well.
Excellent. Thank you. Alder Figueroa Cole, would you like to speak?
Yes, I don't recall the number, but there was a speaker on it, and it was specific neighborhood on the west side where he spoke about having a school and then having access to services, but I don't remember the number of that.
Yes, that fell under 1 through 3, which Alderfield also identified. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So with that, I guess I'll move on to any business by members and communication. Any business by members? Oh,
and
sorry.
also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to the discussion about the churches. Sure, that I don't disagree that there should be some analysis done on that, but I also want to remind us that there's precedents in the city already for these changes to have happened. At least during my time on council, I've seen 2 of them that have been converted. And before my time, like the police station in Midtown, that used to be a church too. So I don't know if it's a national trend that is happening, but I think it is something that is not as uncommon as it may sound. So I appreciate the ask for more analysis on this, but we should not forget that there's precedence, and maybe that should be also highlighted. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Kirsty?
Yeah, thank you. That was one thing that I was going to mention. I think it was Commissioner Heck mentioned that there were some comments from a member of the public named Mark Elsden, I believe is the name. And there were written comments submitted that were added to Legistar a little bit late. They are already on Legistar though. So if you missed it, I believe the date on that one was 9-3. 23. So you can find the written comments from Mark Elsden in that attachment on Legistar. And just briefly, it is a national trend, this issue with places of worship closing. And in fact, American Planning Association has put out some recent research about this topic with some recommendations, I think within the last year or so. So it's not just a Madison issue, but wanted to point you to that public comment that is on Legistar.
Yeah, it would be great if you wouldn't mind sharing that APA information with the group. Commissioner, oh, there you go, thumbs up. Okay. Alder Figueroa Cole? No? Oh, okay. Anything for Secretary's report and announcements, Heather?
Oh, I'll just say that I think our September 18th meeting will be a significant meeting. We'll want to carry through these items. We'll also have a discussion about an Alder's resolution regarding the creation of a potential housing task force that may take some time, and then the typical development items as well. I think all of that is fine, but I just wanted to mention that to commissioners that it could be a relatively full slate on September 18th. And as staff will continue to work with Vice Chair Solheim in the meantime to figure out the best order for that meeting, and how to work most efficiently through these remaining items. Really appreciate your guidance tonight. I think it's going to help immensely as we move forward with the more formal introduction of these changes to the generalized future land use map and the comprehensive plan as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. With that, I will look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Heck, seconded by Alder Field. I will assume unanimous consent. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your evening.